So welcome, new ladies, to the temple. So excited to have you all here. We are an international community of awakening women who are stepping into our deeper purpose, activating our gifts for humanity, living more fully in our spiritual authenticity, and being seen and heard in a whole new way here in the temple. And so a couple of things very exciting coming up before I jump into tonight's talk is that the March 20th Spring Equinox Activation registration page has literally just gone live in preparation for tonight's talk. I'm so proud of the team, and the new people have jumped in. I hired my amazing stepson to be our tech guy, and he helped us put everything together. It's been very exciting and fun preparing all this for you. So mark your calendars for March 20th Spring Equinox Activation. So that's going to be a one-day immersive experience into the Priestess archetype, exploring our spiritual authenticity, playing with what we want our lives to really look like, what might be holding us back for actualizing our dreams for our lives, and do some work around playing with shadow, doing some forgiveness work, letting go of the past so we can step into this powerful Spring Equinox excuse me, my cat's bothering me, into this powerful Spring Equinox portal together. So this is going to be a global gathering of women entrepreneurs around the world that are focused on business or a creative project and weaving in your spiritual gifts into that. So mark your calendars for that. I'm going to put the link for that in the comments here below the video. And so tonight I'm going to be sharing some about my healing quest north to visit my father, who I hadn't seen in 11 years. He is someone that has struggled his whole life with bipolar and alcoholic tendencies. And still to this day, he's challenged by that. And so I'm one of many of us that grew up with a fairly emotionally disconnected father and someone that was pretty wounded. And even though he's incredibly compassionate and loving and always wanted the best for us, he had big demons inside that he had to deal with his whole life. Shadow conversations, unworthiness, and lots of challenges. And so this conversation tonight is around how can we honor who our parents are and who the elders are in our familial lineage line, allow them to be who they are, and stop trying to make them be something else. And so the first thing I'd like for you to write down, grabbing your journal and a pen for tonight, is our parents are always doing the best they can with what they know. Let me get my kitty cat to put on my lap because he likes to be up here, but is going to be bothersome if I don't. This is midnight. Hi, I love to be part of the temple talks. Whew, all kinds of distractions tonight. So, number one, we want to recognize our parents are always doing the best they can with what they know. And each generation of our familial lineage line is learning and growing and being different than the one before. And for myself and the women that I serve and my colleagues, we're in a huge awakening around the family lineage line patterns that are no longer serving us. And we are being called to be the ones to stop the wounding pattern of our ancestors. We're the ones to say no more to physical, mental, emotional, spiritual abuse. And we activate that awareness and our own abilities to heal and forgive and let go of the past on this path. It's one of the most powerful things that we do, because when we're holding the baggage of the old, we're holding the wounding of our forefathers and mothers, for lack of a better word, of our lineage line, we're not able to move forward into our full spiritual authenticity. We're not able to live the full authentic life we came here to live because we're too concerned, too caught up in the past and what our parents may have done or not done. And so for many of us, we're actually living the lives that our parents didn't allow themselves to live, because we have the abilities and the awareness and the aspect of awakening to allow us to do that. And so with the challenges that my father had in his life, I truly believe and have come to believe through living and working this path of the priestess path is that when we are incredibly spiritually gifted, we're empathic and very open to the unseen realm, to the multiple dimensions, to those that have passed, to spirits and guides. It can be incredibly overwhelming when we're so open that we haven't learned boundaries and understand how to navigate those gifts and skills. So I really think that my father was actually very spiritually gifted and very sensitive. And he grew up in an environment where that was not cultivated, that was not honored, and he wasn't really seen as a child. And so for many of us, we have that experience, right? So this is an opportunity as parents and aunties, and for many of us that haven't given birth to our own children, we have little ones in our world that we are influencing by who we are being. It's our responsibility and our opportunity to shift that pattern. How do we shift that pattern? Is to give love and compassion to what has been. And forgiveness work is a huge part of this. Ultimately, it's self-forgiveness, because we have learned the patterns of wounding that we are then carrying on. And this was a big wake-up call for me over the weekend to see how the patterns that I learned from my parents of codependency and not being able to stand on their own 2 feet, not really being able to stand fully in their authenticity until much later in life, especially for my mom. She stood much more into her spiritual and sexual power as an older crone woman. And so we reach a point where we see this opportunity to change the pattern. And for me, I saw how those patterns had been reflected in my love relationship with my partner, John. We've been together 15 years this year. And even with the amount of self-awareness we had and personal growth work that we've done, we still, once we became married and moved into a life as a monogamous couple, these old patterns and ways of being creep in. And it happens to all of us until we become aware that it's happening and we decide to consciously shift it. And so on the Priestess Path and in the 9-month immersion program, I talk a lot about the 3-part dynamic of codependence and independence. And the place in the middle we want to find is interdependence. That's what we're moving towards individually and collectively, globally, is interdependence. And for us to recognize that we are incredibly interdependent on the planet, that we really need each other. We need connection and heart connection and physical connection, and to feel of purpose and to know that we're doing something good with our lives. And that move away from either the unhealthy aspects of codependency, where we're not enough, we need another to complete us, versus the independence where I'm okay, I don't need anybody, I can handle it all myself, into the state of interdependence. And when we do that, I really feel that there is a burning off of the old way of being that must occur, because with each rebirth must first be a death. There must first be a deathing of the old before the new can be born, which is what the March 20th equinox activation is going to be all about. What are we giving death to in a conscious way? So this is changing our relationship with death and deathing what we know needs to be let go of, so the new can be born. The freshness of spring, what are we going to step into that we're celebrating next? And in our culture that doesn't do well, in my opinion, with death, we don't give enough grieving time to celebrate the person and to really allow ourselves to see what they contributed to the world, to our lives, and to allow them to be deeply honored, regardless of the life that they had and how it was left. Can we give forgiveness to what wasn't working, the wounding we might have received, and glean the gold from the experience? So I'll share on the way. So the way my weekend worked on my journey is my father's in Pennsylvania, as well as a dear priestess sister of mine, Jasa, who's an incredible shamanic priestess that does beautiful healing work in her temple. We do very similar but different work, because we're very different people too. So my goal and vision was to see my dad on the way up, do some healing work in her temple for a few days, and then see him on the way back. And so what was so very interesting about that is, so my father is still drinking at this point, and normally starts in the early afternoon. And so my family knows, only call him before 2 o'clock, pretty much, unless you want to get a different version of dad. And so anyone that grew up with alcoholism in your home, you know what I mean, especially if it was mixed with a bipolar tendencies. So bipolar manic depressive, before like they shifted a little more PC, they call it bipolar now. It's basically a bit of a split. It's almost like a split personality inside someone that means that they can respond to something in two completely different ways. So on the way up, you know, Dad knew that I was coming. I was going to see him around for breakfast the next morning, because I got there the evening before. And first time I've seen him in 11 years. He was pleasant and gentle and sweet. And I could tell he was a little nervous because he lives on his own. He's a little hermit up on the side of a mountain in Pennsylvania. He loves his life the way it is, not really social at all, except to see his neighbors. And we shared some breakfast, we went on a walk, and he's also not much of a talker. So I was one asking a lot of questions and just being with the feeling of being with my father again. It was really pleasant. Relatively speaking, a fairly short visit, but I thought I'd probably see him on the way back. So had some really wonderful hugs, took the picture here you saw on the page, really beautiful. And then I took off to see my friend to start doing some ritual in her temple. And this ritual specifically before this equinox is, and as if you've been in the temple this year, you've heard me talk about healing the wounds of my father a lot. I haven't titled it this, but it's been healings around the masculine, my own inner masculine, the relationship with my father and brothers, and around healing my own sexuality and receivership. It's really important for us to do this work as women. So this was coming to a completion of that cycle that started last year in the springtime, right around COVID time. And I knew that I needed to get up there, even though the timing wasn't ideal for everything I have happening in my life. Spirit said, go before spring equinox. So the goal was, and this is all very spirit guided, was to really step fully in my sovereignty. And for me, that was healing that last bit of codependent link to my father, because he was fairly absent emotionally most of my life. One way that he showed love was to support me financially at times when I needed it over the years. That time when, you know, major car repair for thousands of dollars, or being one trip I was in Spain and had a bunch of money stolen and needed to have him wire money when I was in my early 20s. That was before cell phones and internet, just for an example. So I equated love with money from my father. And I realized that that was actually somehow holding me back from fully stepping into my full sovereignty and power within my business, because there was this sense that, like, Daddy will always have my back. And it hasn't been many times that he has, but those times that he has, I realized that that was one way I allowed myself to feel love from him. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I recognized that there was an aspect and dynamic conversation within me that was holding me back from standing fully in my own sovereign power and my spirituality and in my business and the way that I support people. And so this weekend was about finally cutting that cord. And so we did lots of ritual in the temple, and it was incredibly powerful. Lots of onion layers pulled away, pulled into the spiral. Let me just check something here to make sure y'all can all see me. I just saw a notification pop up. Just want to make sure, excuse me for a moment. Make sure that we are streaming fine, because it just disappeared. Okay, all right, we're good. Always have to check that. So after all that ritual and feeling like many layers have been stripped away and preparing for initiation this weekend, I'll be initiating my current 9-month ladies onto the Priestess path. And so this was preparing me fully to step into that as well. So I made the return journey south to stop at my dad's on the way down. And I got the opposite in a way, but I'll share with you what I mean. So he didn't answer his phone that morning. That's the only way to be in touch with him. And when I arrived, I knocked on the door a couple times and the door was locked. So I started to feel my heartbeat kick in, and that adrenaline response of the old way when I didn't know what was getting ready to happen. That happened a lot growing up. And I'm sure if you grew up in an alcoholic home, you know what I mean. So I was anxious but committed. And then I heard him coming and unlocking the door, and I could tell that he had been drinking. And so I felt that like rush of, oh God, here we go again, sort of feeling from the past. And I just allowed myself in that moment to breathe into it. This is uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to sit with him. I'm going to talk to him anyway. I'm not going to let this get in the way. We're talking like, 6.5-hour drive for me each way. So it's not just around the corner. And so I just stayed present with it. And I asked him if he'd like to go on a walk. And eventually he was like, yes, let's do that. And I could just tell, I don't even know how much he'd had at that point, but he was definitely altered. So we took a different walk this time in a different section of the neighborhood. He lives along a river in the mountains. And I found myself unraveling those old stories and reminding myself that I'm a grown woman that drove myself there, that nothing bad was happening right now, that I was okay. And I was literally healing my little girl as we walked. And I allowed myself to bring in some humor and talk about the roosters that were crowing in the background and the peeper frogs that were popping out early in the spring, and noticing the beauty of the trees and the breeze. Because again, he's not a big talker. And I just stayed present in it. So this is something else to write down. If you can allow yourself to stay present in the moment when you are charged by what has previously been a really big deal for you, you can heal just by staying present. That can actually be enough. That it doesn't have to be years of therapy to dive into why you felt that way and what he meant by that and how could he and blah, 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 blah. I could go down that trail very quickly, and I've done it a lot. It can become a distraction. Distraction number one from being fully present. Distraction number two from staying in your heart and loving the person anyway. He's had a tough life. He has had a lot of fights and inner battles within himself. He didn't choose a healing path in the way that I did in my perception of the way I want to live my life. He's living his life the way he is choosing to live it. So we have got to allow other people to live their lives. And this is big for a lot of us that want to change, save the world. And this is something we have to get when we step into our spiritual gifts and our authenticity, to step into the mentors and psychics and mediums and readers and healers that you are, is to actually heal this piece. Because all the energy you're putting into trying to help people heal that do not want to be helped keeps you away from helping those you're actually here to serve. This is a huge wake-up call, ladies, that we've got to get in our codependent patterns. And codependent doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's just a description of a way of being that you get to awaken to and choose differently. So let me say that again. The energy that's going to you trying to help people that don't want to be helped could shift to support the people you're actually here to serve. Can you feel the difference of the energy? It's like you're trying to force people to do something you think they should do versus being in service to those that are ready for your gifts. Deep breath in. This is so important to recognize, because that's part of what's holding you back from stepping into doing the work you came here to do, because you've been exhausting yourself trying to help people who don't actually want to be helped. And this is a little bit of come to Jesus meeting and a bit of a hard pill to swallow, because we love our families. We want them to be healthy and happy, but they have to want that for themselves. And you're wasting your precious life force trying to change those that don't want to be changed. So, another deep breath. It's okay. We're always doing the best we can with what we know. We don't know until we know. And we shift when we're ready to shift. And so this was some of the biggest lessons I learned from my journey, and I'll be integrating the powerful work that I did with my temple sister for a while because it was deep and it was the ending of a long year of healing. So setting your attention to join us on Saturday, March 20th. We normally, it's normally valued at a pretty high rate for a day immersion with us, but we're offering it at an incredibly affordable rate, $400 scholarship to join us because we want as many women to join as possible. This feels really important to come together because we're actually officially moving into the Aquarian age after spring equinox. We're in the final new moon. We're in the final cycle of the age we are leaving and moving into the Aquarian age. So we're going to do that together. So not only is spring equinox powerful, but we're in a powerful year after having experienced 2020 together. And then you add astrologically what's happening, you want to be there. And with that, you can bring the intention to heal old ways of being in your lineage line and be the one to say no more. We're going to be bringing that into our awareness. What do you want for your life? What's in the way? Do some releasing ceremonies, some forgiveness work, and call in the new together. It's going to be very powerful. So look out for that link here below in the comments below this video. And if you're seeing this through YouTube, where we also post the temple talks, then you can check out Temple of the Mystic Priestess on Facebook. You'll be able to find that link. I'll try to get my tech guy to put the link in there. So save the date, 12 to 5 EST on that day. It's going to be incredible. And share here in the comments below what you received from tonight. So wonderful to be here with you all. Big blessings, ladies, and keep your eyes out for an invite coming here in the temple as well for the activation. That'll be going out to everyone I'm technically friends with here in the temple because Facebook won't let me invite everyone, but it will be pinned at the top so you'll see it, and it's going to be incredible. So more info to come on that, and so excited to have so many of you join us for that incredible day. Much love and blessings. Good night for now. Ta-ta.